This is one example of allostatic load. The nature of our environment can give rise to different kinds of stress. Suburbs, middle class environments have their own kinds of stress. And inner cities, poor neighborhood, has yet a different kinds of stress. And this will affect our sympathetic nervous system, our immune system, our hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis or HPA axis, and our inflammatory responses, or the stress, the different kinds of stress we are exposed to given our environment, given our residence, can also affect our cardiovascular system. And this in turn affects our health, different dimensions of health. This affects our physical health, cognitive functioning, physical activity or limitations, mental health, and so on and so forth, or even disability. And here we will have some relevant examples pertaining to biomarkers and maybe allostatic load. Living or being born in poor neighborhoods affects the level of attachment between children and parents, and this level of attachment can happen even before the kid was born in the mother's womb through the placenta or something. The level of attachment. Sometimes babies are smart, we all know. They can sense the environment when they are still in the mother's womb. And this is going to affect whether they are going to turn out to be attached, securely attached, or insecurely attached. And all this in turn is going to affect people's stress level, like hormones or cortisol level, or living in a highly stressful environment can affect people's security. This in turn affects maybe the loss in hippocampus area. So these are the biomarkers. And the final outcomes would be compromised immune system, the loss of bone minerals. It also affects our memory. So, as you can see, the social class differences in health is also manifested in this example. They work through the different biomarkers in here, which ultimately affects their final health outcomes in terms of immune system, bone minerals, or even memory, cognitive health. And sometimes the different diseases are interrelated, sometimes through the biomarkers. Hypertension or hyperglycemia, they are due to different causes. Salt intake, sedentary, being overweight or being obese, alcohol use. And there are different causes of hyperglycemia. Too many carbs intake, not enough glucose or insulin, or you skip them. And infection, illness and stress. So think about this. Think about this part for a second. What causes excessive salt intake? Does that have something to do with a person's place of residence or socio-economic well-being or social class? What affects people's salt intake? And what affects sedentary behavior or physical inactivity? The lack of exercise, in layman's word. Does that have something to do with a person's education level, which is one proxy of social class? Maybe due to a given social class, social economic status, people are not aware about the importance of exercise It may directly or indirectly link to hypertension. And what causes overweight or obesity? Does that have something to do with social class, characteristics of neighborhood, accessibility or inaccessibility of healthy food stalls, the lack of transportation? Is that another manifestation of social class differences or socio-economic status differences, overweight and obesity? Who are more likely to be overweight, rich or poor people or middle class? Take a wild guess. Who? Poor, yeah. Maybe because of the different levels of health literacy. Maybe low educated folks, low income folks are more likely to be overweight and obese or underweight. It can be the reverse. And who are more likely to abuse alcohol? People who live in a certain environment, maybe insecurely attached families or whatnot. So, we can see the causes of hypertension are affected by the social conditions of a given place or the characteristics of a given neighborhood. So this is another manifestation of how social conditions are going to interact with biological factors to ultimately affect our health outcomes. The same thing for the causes of hyperglycemia. Are they going to affect the poor more, the middle class more, or the rich more? Too many carbs. Carbs are cheap, not too expensive. And who are more likely to consume more carbohydrates in their diets? People in a certain occupation, maybe blue collar work. And sometimes they correspond to people of a given educational level. So social class influence is also there. And like what Ali used to mention, insulin is expensive. So not everybody can afford insulin for their healthcare needs. Again, another manifestation of social class differences. And who are more likely to be infected? It depends on the neighborhood characteristics, right? And who are more likely to be ill? It's a no-brainer. And who are more likely to be stressed? Which group of people are more stressed? Poor people, middle class, or rich people? Who has more control over their life? Rich and middle class. So, social class differences are also manifested in the causes of hyperglycemia. Think for a second about the coupons, grocery coupons sometimes we get in the mailbox. The food on sale, food items or beverage on sale, are they healthy? Think for a second. We always get all these coupons, right? Are those healthy stuff? Sometimes they're 50% or 20% or 80%. Okay. Are those yogurt healthy or they are high in sugar? I don't know. Depends. So one fact sometimes is correct. The stuff on sale, the coupons we see, sometimes they are not healthy. And who are more inclined to purchase them is a no-brainer. So this is another manifestation of how social conditions, social class interacts with biomarkers to affect health outcomes. And having hypertension or hyperglycemia can lead to being diabetic. And what's the cause of diabetic mellitus? Family history. This has something to do with a person's neighborhood and social class. And another cause would be insulin. Not everybody can afford that. Or insulin production in the pancreas. And sometimes social class differences, neighborhood characteristics can also affect people's immune system. And it's a no-brainer. We talk about overweight and obesity or being sedentary. These all have social economic or social class implications. And sometimes being diabetic mellitus can also transfer into diabetic retinopathy. The disease, the form of the disease can change. I'm sure some of you know. And what's the cause of diabetic retinopathy? People neglect to monitor their blood sugar. Who are more likely to neglect? It's a no-brainer. Rich or poor or middle class. It's a no-brainer. And the duration of diabetes. Who are more in control of their diabetic situation? It's a no-brainer again. High blood pressure. Who has more knowledge in monitoring high blood pressure? Social class implications are manifested in there again. And sometimes people with diabetic retinopathy can, if they are not careful, develop what? Open-angle glaucoma. It eventually affects their eyesight, vision functioning. So the progression of these different diseases or health conditions talks about the different levels of health literacy or the different levels of healthcare access among people from different socio-economic statuses. Are we clear? So sometimes we know there's a diversity in the process of aging. People from different socio-economic statuses, people with different education levels, people from different social class, people from different ethnic racial groups, we all go through the process of aging differently. It's a no-brainer. Given our different backgrounds, educational level, socio-economic status, wealth, income, and whatnot. And because of that, some people are more aware or are more able to afford eye examinations. And this is crucial. Yeah, now we take it for granted. But as we progress through age, you're still young. Maybe you don't understand. I understand somewhat. I'm more than twice your age. So some people can better afford eye examinations or laser treatment, blood pressure monitoring, or they are more aware of why they have to have their blood pressure monitored from time to time to control hypertension or to detect and diagnose hypertension as a preventive measure. And some people have more awareness about vitamins, minerals intakes. The same thing for substance use and abuse. They all vary by social class, socio-economic status, education, and sometimes substance use or substance abuse vary by racial ethnic groups. For some racial groups, smoking is a sign of masculinity, but some ethnic groups tend to be more health conscious. And because of that, people from different backgrounds develop or have different risks of enhanced glycemia or diabetic retinopathy. Because of their different awareness, different abilities to afford all these tests or treatments or diagnoses. And because of that, people from different socio-economic status, different racial groups, different educational backgrounds, and so on and so forth, they have different risks of nuclear cataract, age, macular degeneration, and whatnot. And this explains why, and it has been done by researchers, that people from different backgrounds, different ethnic groups, different educational level, they have different risks for blindness and visual impairment. So this is another example where social and biological factors interact to affect all these disparities in health. Are we clear? To research, Hispanics have higher risk of low vision or blindness or cataract or open angle glaucoma compared to other racial ethnic groups. Hispanics and African Americans, they have higher risk for these things. And this is another example of how biological factors and social factors interact to affect health disparities across different racial groups, different social class, people with different educational levels and whatnot. And this has something to do with Hispanics or Latinos. They go through a different aging process. And their distinct family history. And these things has something to do with socio-economic status or social factors, or even diabetes. It has something to do with lifestyle and diet. It has something to do with social factors or social class or educational level. The same thing for eye injury. It has something to do with a person's occupation sometimes, maybe educational level, the kind of job a person has. And this contributes to increased risk of cataracts among Hispanics, which in turn, if they don't take care of it, or if they are not aware or not able to take care of their cataract problems, it may eventually progress to low vision when they hit old age. And last week, we talked about the biomarkers that contribute to the development of diabetic retinopathy. And sometimes the workings of all these biomarkers, allostatic load. The meaning of allostatic load are provided in another lecture, saved in MP4 format, so you can listen on your own. How all these biomarkers operate or work? They are affected by the social factors. So, Hispanics, they have higher risk for diabetes retinopathy. It has something to do with maybe their diet, health behaviors, lifestyle, health literacy, and whatnot. All these things, the social factors distinctive to Hispanics, they interact with biomarkers. They cause biomarkers of that racial ethnic group to behave in a certain way, which are different from other racial ethnic groups. And because of that, research has found that Hispanics are at a higher risk for open angle glaucoma. And if they are not aware, they are not able to take care of this, it may eventually progress to blindness. So this is a second example among Hispanic groups of how social factors interact with biological factors to affect health outcomes among Hispanics. Are we clear? I think the three racial ethnic groups, Caucasians or whites, African Americans or Hispanic or Latinos, they have higher risk for different eye diseases. And they are all different eye diseases as we saw, because their distinctive social factors interact with their unique biological factors, which contribute to each of these racial groups having higher risk of different eye diseases. So, Caucasians or people of European descent, due to their distinct aging process, different from other racial ethnic groups, their particular family history, smoking behaviors, high cholesterol, it has something to do with a person's diet, and sometimes socio-economic status, education level, affects health literacy and affects a person's diet, which contributes to high cholesterol. The same thing for obesity or cardiovascular diseases. A person's health literacy, a person's maybe diet or lifestyle contributes to the presence or absence or the risk of cardiovascular diseases. So some of these diseases are related, as we can see from this slide. Obesity, having high cholesterol, having heart diseases. Sometimes they affect our vision. This is distinct of whites. Hispanics go through a different pattern. And because of that, whites are at higher risk of age-related macular degeneration. So depending on their education level, socio-economic well-being, social class or whatnot, if they are not able or not aware, they don't take care of it. It can contribute to blindness, the same thing. Are we clear? And the particular aging process a person goes through can affect hand grip strength. Do you know what is hand grip strength? I'm sure you know, some of you. Yeah, sometimes they are being measured as we age. We go through our physicals. Sometimes doctors measure our hand grip strength in both hands. So the distinct aging process we go through affects how strong our both hands are. Social factors and our bone mineral density also affects our hand grip strength. And what determines our bone mineral density? Lifestyle, diets or whatnot, health behaviors, health literacy, and all these have social class implications, educational implications. The diet is affected by people's social class, people's educational level, which affects health literacy, which in turn affects diet, and this can eventually affect people's bone mineral density. I think you know it's a no-brainer. If, especially ladies, we drink too much Coke or something similar, it's going to affect directly affect our bone mineral density. And we can be more prone to osteoporosis if we are not careful. And people from different backgrounds, some have more awareness about this, some have less awareness. So bone mineral density is one example of biomarkers, and this can in turn affect a person's hand grip strength. The same thing for osteoporosis. Bone mineral density can affect osteoporosis, which in turn affects decline in hand grip strength. No-brainer. And as we can see, wow, sometimes multiple illnesses or diseases intersect and interacts to affect an ultimate health outcomes. If somebody has a history or family history of cardiovascular diseases, this can also affect a person's hand grip strength. And what determines the onset of cardiovascular diseases? Is that a disease in the first world country or in the third world country? It's a common sense question. Why do people get heart diseases or cardiovascular diseases? Maybe it has something to do with the person's occupation, stressful or less stressful or not stressful or moderate stress, who knows? Or maybe a person's education level. With education, the person knows how to maintain his or her health of the heart, get checkups or whatnot when they hit a certain age. So this is another example of how social factors contributes to the different risks of heart diseases, and this in turn contribute to hand grip strength. And the same thing, research has found that people from certain occupations, they have stronger hand grip strength. They are less likely to experience decline in hand grip strength, or the decline is at a slower rate if they go to checkups regularly and they are being measured periodically. People from extractive occupations like construction, farming, fishing or whatnot, because of the nature of their labor when they were young, they are less likely to experience decline in hand grip strength or their decline is lower for them compared to folks in blue-collar occupation. This has been confirmed by research. And it's a no-brainer. People's education level also affects the rate of decline in hand grip strength over time. Given a person's education level, some people are more inclined, they are more aware to take precautionary measures, and they can prevent that. And some people are not aware or not able to do such things. So they experience a faster rate of decline in hand grip strength. And it's a no-brainer again. People's income or wealth affects people's ability to prevent the decline in hand grip strength. Same thing like education. And decline in hand grip strength can in turn affect our cognitive functioning. And in turn affects our mortality. How soon or how late we will die when we hit old age. So all these different illnesses, sometimes they interact and intersect. It's the workings of the biomarkers. Are we clear? And I think we've been through this before. This is another example of how social and biological factors interact. And we talked about this before. Sometimes a baby is smart. Even when the baby was in the mother's womb, the baby has a very keen awareness of the surroundings. So a person's occupation, residence, these are social factors. And even if the baby infant resides in the mother's womb, they have that kind of awareness. And in certain places, certain neighborhoods, people are more prone to lead exposure. It's not good, we all know. And this affects their biomarkers, the nervous system, the functioning of the nervous system. And this even applies to infants, even before they were born. And this can lead to all kinds of toxifications or poisoning. If they have certain occupations, exposed to occupational hazard, or they live in certain places and they are exposed to a lot of lead, it affects their nervous system. And here are the outcomes. The mother can either experience miscarriage or stillbirth. I'm sure you know the meaning of stillbirth. The baby is stillborn but it died. That's the meaning of stillbirth. And the mother may experience infertility. So this is another example where social and biological factors interact and intersect. The first one is social factors. The second one is partly social and biological factors. The third one is biological factors. And these are the list of health outcomes: miscarriages, infertility, stillbirths. Or even if the baby was born, the baby may be retarded. Or even if the baby is not retarded, well, the baby was tough. This can lead to all kinds of behavioral outcomes. This can affect the kid's intelligence as the kids progress through life, from kid to teenager to young adults and whatnot. This can affect the kid's intelligence. And obviously, this can affect the kid's health due to factors beyond the kid's control. Too bad, so sad. And there are two sets of biomarkers. One are the allostatic loads, we just saw them on Wednesday and today. And the other one is what we call genetic markers or gene expressions. Have you all heard of this gene? A polypoprotein E, APOE4. Have you all heard of this gene? If somebody has a high presence of this APOE4 in his or her system, It can increase the person's risk for Alzheimer's dementia. It can affect the person's cognitive functioning. And this can also increase the person's risk for cardiovascular disease. So this is another example of how social and biological factors interact to affect health outcomes in terms of Alzheimer's disease and heart disease. And what determines the presence of APOE4? Again, the kind of environment a person lives in, whether it's highly stressful or not stressful. And this affects the person's level of attachment or whatnot. And this affects how this APOE4 genes is going to work in the person's system. And because of that, different people living in different places have different likelihoods of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and heart disease. Are we clear? And another example of gene expression is telomere length. And this is another example where social and biological factors interact and intersect. A person's education level, a person's neighborhood or environment determines the health behaviors a person is going to practice, the lifestyle of a person. And this in turn determines a person's weight. From here, we talk about the social factors. And all these social factors in turn affects a person's telomere length. And these can lead to different rates of morbidity. Morbidity means the condition of being sick, or mortality for different people. So this is another example of how social and biological factors interact. All these factors, they affect a person's weight. And weight in turn affects telomere length. And because of that, different people from different backgrounds have different likelihood of developing different diseases, different health conditions. And some people live longer, some people have a shorter life. Are we clear? And sometimes genetic expression, they can interact with allostatic load to affect our physical and mental health. Or we call that the psychosocial well-being. And from the previous slide, or from last week's lectures, we saw that allostatic load and telomere length are affected by people's education, people's neighborhood conditions, people's environment, or people's health behavior. So this is another example of how social and biological factors interact. And a person's neighborhood conditions or environment, whether the person experiences stress, caregiver stress, or the other kinds of stress, or social isolation in that environment, that neighborhood, or the home environment, this can in turn affect a person's gene expression or gene profiling. And this in turn affects a person's health outcomes. So as we can see, sometimes gene expression or genetic markers, they serve as intermediary between social factors and health. Are we clear?